Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Larry McIntosh, and I'll be your host for the next hour and every Saturday morning from 8 to 9. Thanks for tuning in. No matter what age you are, I think everyone has a favorite Sesame Street character. Peak of the Market's new Sesame Street potato and onion bags feature Elmo, Big Bird, Grover, Oscar, Abby, Bert, and Ernie. I hope you've had an opportunity to see our new bright and colorful potato bags and onion tags when you've been in the produce section in your favorite store. Along with the characters, you will still see the Peak of the Market logo, so you are guaranteed it is grown right here in Manitoba. We're very pleased to partner with Sesame Street on the Eat Brighter program. I also want to encourage you, if you happen to be in Winnipeg, we're on 1200 King Edward Street, our building. Drive by Peak of the Market and you'll see our banner that we have up with Sesame Street characters on our building, 150 feet long, and there's a big bird on there that's 18 feet tall. You don't see that very often. My guest this morning is Gail Stevens, Interim President and Chief Operating Officer of the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. Good morning, Gail.
Good morning, Larry.
How are you today?
I'm great. How are you today?
Good. What's your favorite Sesame Street character?
I think my favorite one is the Cookie Monster.
Cookie Monster.
I think so.
Now, there's a petition going out there that we're going to rename him Carrot Monster. It's not really taking off yet, but I'm thinking that would be good.
Well, carrots are probably better for you than cookies, so that's not a bad idea.
And I can't say I've watched the show recently because my daughter's quite old now, but I understand he's eating more fruits and vegetables on the show now, Cookie Monster.
Well, good for him.
I thought so, too.
Yeah.
So the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, a few things have happened in the last couple months.
Yes. It's been a busy few months, that's for sure.
So when did it actually officially open, just as a reminder?
It opened September 20th of this year, so not that long ago.
September 20th was the big day.
Yes.
And it opened up. You had free tours for a while there.
We did. We had people sign up online. We opened our system up for a few hours, and people signed up, and within less than 3 hours, we had 35,000 people apply for the free tickets to see the museum for 9,000 spots. So over 2 days, we had 9,000 people come through on what we called a sneak peek preview.
And surprisingly, I wasn't surprised tickets went fast. I wasn't surprised there was huge demand. But I actually know several people that got the tickets, did the system, and took the tour, and talked about how amazing it was. And you would think that the odds are pretty slim, but that's neat.
Yeah, it was a very exciting moment for us. People lined up well in advance of the 9 o'clock start time, and we welcomed and opened the doors to all of our fans, and it was really quite a very momentous moment for us.
So you've been with the Human Rights Museum for a year or so? Is that what it is?
Just over a year.
Just over a year. And you're currently in the interim role of president, but you're also chief operating officer. So you've been involved in it before it was open, obviously, and now that it is open. What was your biggest thrill over that time?
I think my biggest thrill was November 12th when all of the exhibits were opened and people were able to come in. They were lined up outside the door, and they were able to come in and see the exhibit at their own pace.
I've talked about it on the show before. Shelley and I were fortunate enough to take a tour while it was under construction. Now, I'm a little embarrassed to say we haven't been there since it opened. Kind of a busy time of year. We had a big renovation at our building and Peak of the Market, et cetera. Lots of excuses, but we haven't been there. So kind of paint a bit of a picture what it would look like when we arrive there.
It's an amazing experience. I think a lot of people talk about the architecture because the architecture is truly amazing. You start your journey by coming through the routes, which are meant to be the dark side, and the farther you get up in the museum, the lighter it is, and the Tower of Hope is the very pinnacle. As amazing, though, as the architecture is, and it really is one-of-a-kind, iconic architecture, I believe the exhibits also offer that kind of once-in-a-lifetime experience. The person that helped us with the exhibits is Ralph Applebaum. He's done exhibits for major museums all over the world, including the Holocaust Museum and the Newseum in Washington, D.C. So I think the thing that I hear most often is we go to the museum, we think we'll be able to see it in a day, we can't, we have to come back. There's over 100 hours of films, so really to get the full exposure of the museum, you have to come back many, many times.
So, I mean, we visited museums in our travels around the world, not that most of it's North America, but we've seen them in Germany and some other areas. And a museum to me is generally artifacts, if you want to call it that. You look at whatever might be, and we've been to Churchill, you see sculptures, whatever it might be. But this is more interactive, is what I'm trying to say, is it?
It really, uses technology in really interesting and meaningful ways. It's an ideas museum. It's not to show artifacts, although there are artifacts, but nowhere near what people consider a typical museum. The idea is to come and explore human rights stories from both sides, have a dialogue about it, have a debate. We think success is when there is debate around a subject because it gets people talking, it gets people thinking, and it gets people thinking about human rights and their role and the responsibilities around human rights.
Being more technological, if that's the proper word, is it easier to change the exhibits, or is it still just as challenging as any other museum, or a bit of both?
It's a bit of both. I mean, the level of research and all of that is the same as it would be. But the ease of changing technology and adding elements and deleting elements obviously is much easier than when you have large physical artifacts that you have to protect and keep under glass and all of the museological processes you must go through. So,
Museological? Is
yeah.
that the really? Wow. Okay. Sorry, go ahead. That's a neat word.
So it's simpler from that perspective. It also allows you to be fairly current. And one of the big assets that the museum has is we now have over 180 oral histories. So people that have lived through various challenges in their life have told their stories, and we've captured them. And so there's a whole library of that available to people where you can come in and really hear very detailed stories of what it was like to go through a whole variety of challenges in their life.
We'll be right back with Gail Stevens, Interim President and Chief Operating Officer for the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, right after we take this break for your 680 CJOB weather update. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Food and Friends. Food and Friends Radio is now on TV. Each radio show is filmed and will be posted at MyToba.ca tomorrow. If you want to see the TV version of this or previous radio shows, please visit MyToba.ca. Thanks to 680 CJOB's Nicole, who produces the show, and Riley, who operates the camera, as well as the teachers of the Broadcasting and Media Arts program at TechVoc High School. You can also listen to an audio podcast of Food and Friends at SoundCloud.com and at the iTunes Store. So please just do a search for Food and Friends with Larry at MyToba.ca or SoundCloud.com or the iTunes Store, and all the shows will come up for your listening or viewing pleasure. And it's very important for me to mention that Food and Friends is only available because of 680 CJOB and its advertisers. So please tune in to 680 CJOB or listen live at cjob.com. We're back with Gail Stevens, Interim President and Chief Operating Officer of the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. I was just thinking we're at the commercial break there that one of the most amazing things, I mean, I said the last spot we took the tour of it before it opened of the museum when it was under construction. I was impressed then with the stones and everything was involved. But we flew over, coming back from wherever it was, Toronto, we flew over the facility, and that is incredible from the air. And that was before it was lit up. It was before it was open. But it was during the day. But it was an incredible facility to see, and it's kind of like branch roots coming out of it. It's amazing. It's a real architectural amazing is what I'm trying to say.
I agree, and I think the architect took every aspect of that building from a human rights perspective. So the building itself, even without exhibits, has a story to tell.
And there's a spot there that I think you anticipated, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but you anticipated when people are protesting things around the world that they would come to the museum for that. There's an actual area for that, is there? Or?
No, not really.
Not really, no?
But we are looking at, is there an appropriate area where you can have the museum as a backdrop? But obviously, with the snow and colder weather, it's a little more difficult at this point.
Because there's things that happen all over the world, obviously, and quite often they go to the Manitoba legislature. It has nothing to do with Manitoba necessarily, but that seems to be a focus place. So I thought that maybe they'd be coming to the museum for that type of thing as well, but I guess we'll find out over time. So you're going to the museum. I also remember something when Izzy Asper was talking about the museum, the concept of the museum, at one point about it being technological. I can't get that word out. That there was going to be something where you could actually take stuff away from you rather than taking paper. You could take a memory stick or something away. Has something like that happened, or
a lot of it will be over time available on the website.
Okay.
But you are also able to, on your iPhone, there is now an app or any of your personal phone devices, there's now an app, and so it helps guide you through the museum.
Okay.
If you don't have a personal device, we have free of charge on loan iPods for you to take. And it does give you further information about each of the exhibits you're going to see, and it's quite interactive.
So this is something you were saying earlier about causing discussions or creating discussions over the issues that have happened in the world. And you want people to have that information when they go away, to have the conversation after they left the museum, I assume.
We do. And one of the other things, one of our galleries, we allow people to fill out cards if they want to leave messages for future guests, for the museum. And I think to date we've had about 3,500 cards filled out.
Really?
And it's things about imagine this, imagine a world, what lessons have you learned, what would you like to contribute, how could we do better, what inspired you, what didn't you understand. Our main goal is to continuously improve, to get feedback from people that come to the museum, to learn from people that come through the museum, and to take that to make it a richer experience in the long term.
Has the attendance been what you've hoped?
The attendance has been excellent. We have, between the months of September and October, we have a door counter, so everybody that comes in and out of the museum is counted. And between coming through the museum on tours, events, etc., we've had in those 2 months over 80,000 people.
Oh, really?
So it's been greater than what we expected. We're now leveling off to on average 1,000 a day, which is a very healthy number of people. In the months of September, October, November, December, we will have booked 150 events. So it's very popular for a whole variety of events to be held in the museum.
What type of events would that be?
There's everything from receptions to dinners to we've had some weddings. We've had events, corporate events, where they also do a tour as part of their corporate event. We've had debates. We've had guest lecturers. So it's a whole variety of groups and activities. Some large, some small. There's been some days we've had more than one event on at the same time. We've got a variety of spaces in the museum where events can take place, and obviously a beautiful backdrop for which that can happen.
Incredible backdrop, obviously.
Yes.
So I thought about events there, and I thought about, if we have a convention in town, it'd be great, depending on the size of the convention, to have a reception there and those type of things. So it is open to those type of things.
It is open to those kinds of things, and we've had quite a number of them. And over the Christmas season, obviously, quite a few more planned between now and the end of December.
Do you have a sit-down dinner there, or?
We've had sit-down dinners for, I think the largest is about 500 people.
Really?
And we've had 2 or 3 weddings, and it's been very, very popular.
And it sounds like, it's a beautiful location. It's a beautiful building. The reason it exists is fantastic. So it makes a lot of sense to use it for more than just the daytime things. I assume a lot of these things happen at night.
A lot of them happen at night, but some of them happen during the day as well.
Okay.
One of the big aspects, obviously, it generates revenue and it allows us to keep our admission prices low. We certainly want it to be affordable, that people can come as often as they like, and that's one way to help offset some of the costs of running the museum.
We'll be right back with Gail Stevens, Interim President and Chief Operating Officer of the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, after we take this break. Welcome back to Food and Friends. It's time for our recipe segment called Now We're Cooking. You don't need to write this recipe down, as it is today's Recipe of the Day at peakmarket.com and now in the Winnipeg Free Press. Today's recipe is cucumber cream soup. Cucumber cream soup. Here's what you need for the recipe. 3 medium cucumbers, peeled and cut into cubes. 1 garlic clove halved. 3 tablespoons of parsley chopped. 3 tablespoons of onion chopped. For best results, use Manitoba-grown onions. 1 cup of chicken or vegetable broth. 3 tablespoons of white wine vinegar. 2 cups of plain yogurt. And 1 cup of sour cream, and salt and pepper to taste. In a blender, combine the cucumbers, garlic, parsley, onion, broth, and vinegar. Process until well blended. Pour about half the mixture into a small container and set aside. Add about half the yogurt and half the sour cream to the cucumber mix remaining in the blender. Process until smooth and pour into a small bowl. Repeat with the reserved cucumber mixture and remaining yogurt and sour cream. Season soup to taste with salt and pepper and cover and refrigerate for at least 4 hours or until the next day. Stir well and pour into small serving bowls. And this recipe, serve 6. Again, this recipe is today's recipe of the day at peakmarket.com and in the Winnipeg Free Press. We'll be right back with Gail Stevens, Interim President and COO of the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Food and Friends. Peak in the Market has a mobile recipe app that works on your smartphone, including the iPhone 6, and on your iPad. It's available absolutely free through Apple, Android, or BlackBerry World app stores or via peakmarket.com. If you haven't downloaded it yet, all you have to do is go to any of those sites and search for Peak Recipes. Here's a few features of our app. Over 4,000 recipes at your fingertips. No internet connection required, so once you've downloaded it, it's in your phone or your iPad. It doesn't take a lot of space, but you don't have internet. You don't need internet to use the recipes. You can have a recipe search using any combination of keywords or ingredients or meal types. There's measurements in both metric and imperial. You can also rate the recipes that you like. So if you like it, you rate it 1 to 5 so you know for next time. You can add the recipes to a shopping list and check them off as you shop. You can add notes to the recipes, like add more veggies next time, which is what I hope you add. You can add extra items to a shopping list. One of my favorite things, because I'm getting older now, is you can refont the size and the directions for easier reading. And probably my absolutely favorite thing when we developed this is there's no in-app advertising. So in other words, when you use the app, there's nothing. It's not going to try and sell you anything. It's not going to ask you to click on anything. It's just about recipes. We're very excited about our new mobile recipe app, so please download it and give it a try. If you don't like it, hey, you can always delete it later. We're back with Gail Stevens, Interim President and Chief Operating Officer of the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. Does the museum, you have an app, you were saying that last half hour, right?
We do have an app, yes.
So it's free as well?
Through Apple, yes, it's free.
So you can download it on the Apple Store?
Yeah.
Or you can download us on the Apple Store too.
That's perfect.
Put them right by side on your phone. That'd be kind of cool. Don't
And
you
it's
think?
really the way to live now, right?
I'm not a huge app user, but it's actually amazing how many apps you start using. You know, maps. I can't remember the last time you actually had a map, right? It's all on your phone or on your iPad or.
For sure.
You know.
I remember traveling last year in Sicily, and we used an app for driving
Wow.
in some really out of the way places, and we managed to find our way.
So let's talk about you for a moment. So are you from Manitoba originally?
I was born in Selkirk, Manitoba.
Well, that's definitely Manitoba then.
Yes.
And so you lived here your whole career, or?
I left Winnipeg in 2003
Recently?
to go to Victoria, British Columbia. I was Chief Executive Officer for the BC Pension Corporation.
Oh, okay.
And then city manager in Victoria, and then got a call about would I like to come back and help with this amazing museum.
And you were the Chief Administrative Officer for the City of Winnipeg too, right?
It was.
Before
when
that?
I left in 2003, that was the role I had. And in fact, when I was city manager and Glenn Murray was the mayor, Izzy Asper approached the city about being supportive of this human rights, and he had a little video of what his vision for this museum was. And I remember being so impressed with what he wanted to do for Winnipeg, what he wanted to do for Manitoba, what he wanted to do for Canada, and what he wanted to do for the world.
So you came back from Victoria.
I did.
For the museum.
I did.
So I love Manitoba, and anybody who listens to the show knows I'm a big cheerleader for Manitoba. Victoria is a pretty place.
It is.
Weather's a little milder, not a lot, I guess, but a little bit milder. Was the draw coming back here or the museum, or do you have family here, or both? Or?
It was probably both.
Yeah.
My older son lives here and his wife.
Okay.
My twin brother lives here and his family, and my younger brother lives here and his family. And I've always stayed in touch because I have family here. I've never really moved away. I've always come back 2 or 3 times a year. So it was like coming home.
Isn't it kind of neat that, you heard about it with Glenn Murray, Mayor Glenn Murray at the time, and yourself, you heard about it from Izzy Asper, and then years later you end up back when it's actually coming to reality.
Yeah, so it's sort of, they say everything in your life happens for a reason, and I think I was intended to come back and help with this amazing museum. And it's a very special opportunity for me to be a part of something that was simply an idea back in 2001 when I first heard about it.
And it was a huge idea. I mean, as
It
far
was a
as,
huge idea.
never been a national museum outside the Ottawa area before. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things from the beginning that were going against it, if you want to call it that, to make it a reality. And here we are today. It's a reality.
Well, and I think it's one of the few museums that is supported by the city of Winnipeg, the province of Manitoba, the federal, obviously it's a federal institution and federal government building, but also a huge contribution from the private sector with over, the aim is to get 150 million in private funding through donors, unions, all kinds of folks that over 8,000 people have participated in contributing to the creation of this museum.
And I think that sometimes gets lost. We know about the government funding and all those things there, but there's a lot of people that have given money, small and large amounts, to this museum because they thought it was important.
They believed it was really important, and so I think it speaks to the support across Canada for the museum, and big time the support in Manitoba for this museum.
And I've said this on the show before, but when Shelley and I travel across North America visiting customers and things they don't know a lot about Winnipeg in many cases. I mean, they know we grow vegetables here, but they're happy when we got the Jets back. Even if you're not a hockey fan, they heard about that. But I was amazed at how much over the last 5 years or whatever time frame that's been, everybody's talking about the Canadian Museum for Human Rights and how they're waiting for it to open, how many conventions want to come to Winnipeg once it gets open. And it's just amazing to me, the talk across at least North America about this museum opening.
It has been, and I've traveled across Canada, and people know about it, and I've traveled through the U.S., and people know about it. I think one of the really successful things were some of our public service announcements, those short little 30-second vignettes of what the museum is all about, seemed to really strike a chord with people. And I think it was Canadians' first opportunity to get a visual look at what the outside of the museum looks like, and in some of them what the inside. And I think the glass panels that kind of floated and joined on the building, because the strength of the museum, and I think the interesting piece of the museum, are really the stories that we tell. And I think people can resonate with human stories and be inspired by human stories, and I think people want to come and learn and hear. We're really excited. In January, we start our student program. We've already registered over 7,500 students from across the province, and we will have a pilot project for students across Canada, and so it's quite an exciting time.
We'll be right back with Gail Stevens, Interim President and Chief Operating Officer of the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, after we take this break. Welcome back to Food and Friends. Peak of the Market is on Twitter. Follow us at Peak of the Market for recipes and Food and Friends guest updates. We have over 110,000 Twitter followers, and we'd love to have you follow us too. Again, we're at Peak of the Market, or mine is at Larry McIntosh. We're back with Gail Stevens, Interim President and Chief Operating Officer of the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. Now, I got a press release this week, and it's a big day coming up, Human Rights Day.
It is. So December 10th is the International Human Rights Day, and we're holding a whole number of very special events at the museum in honor of that day. Admission will be free for everyone, so we're really welcoming everybody to come down. And we're extending our hours, so the museum will be open that day from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. We have our annual general meeting is at 10:30 in the morning. We're having our very first ever citizenship ceremony at 1:30 in the afternoon.
Canadian citizenship?
Canadian citizen.
Oh, that's very cool.
Which I think is, such an appropriate place to have it at the museum.
That's great.
And we're co-sponsoring or co-presenting an evening programming with the Assembly of First Nations Special Chiefs Assembly Host Committee, and that'll be very exciting. It will be dance and entertainment throughout the museum.
So when's that again? December
10th.
Okay.
And so we're open from 10 o'clock till 9 p.m. So please come down and just enjoy the day.
And it's free.
And it's free.
Well, you're going to get a lot of people down there for that, I would think.
We will get a lot of people, and that's great. We can hold a lot of people. We can hold, thousands of people, and the more the better.
And I know it's going to be neat. A lot of people that haven't been to the museum, it's a great excuse to come down. It's free. It's Human Rights Day. But really, the admission to the museum, and I'm not sure exactly what the admission is. I remember hearing about. How much is it?
The admission is $15 for adults.
So it's like a movie. It's going
like
to a movie, get a box of popcorn or whatever. It's $15, and you can spend hours and hours there.
As you like.
You were saying earlier it was 100 hours of videos?
There's 100 hours of videos, so you certainly can't do the museum in one visit. And I think it's for that reason we're encouraging people to be members, because for $50 for a family member, $95 for a family membership, 50 for an adult, and 35 for a senior. It's I think a very affordable way to be able to come and spend as much time as often as you like. We intend to have some member events only and some special things just for members. So we really are encouraging people to get a membership and use it often.
So I hadn't heard about the membership before, or had forgotten, but $50 a person or 95 for a family, is that what you said?
Yes, a whole family.
That's a very good deal.
It is a very good deal.
And you come as often as you want?
Can come as often as you want. We're also encouraging, they make great Christmas gifts.
Perfect. And that's for a year?
It's for a year.
So that seems like, I mean, if you're going to come down and you hate to come down and try and cram everything in whatever time you have, because there's so much to see, so much to absorb, that this is an opportunity, if you can afford to do that, which is a very good price, to get a membership and come down often.
And one of the things we're finding is people come in and they just buy a single entryway. They pay their $15, they go through, and they come back at the end of their visit, and they cash in their $15 towards the membership, and we accept it.
Oh, that's great.
So we've had an awful lot of members sign up that way.
So can you get information on the membership and everything on the website, I assume?
Everything's on the website.
What's the
yes.
website?
It's humanrights.ca.
Pretty straightforward. Humanrights.ca. That's a great website address to
Yeah.
get. Wow, that was good. So that's coming up. Is there any other events coming up in the near future?
You know, there's always lots of events. We will be open quite a lot of the time during the holidays, so we're hoping during the holidays people will come on down. We will be closed for 1 week in January just because the technology needs maintaining, and we will traditionally close 1 week in January. But we're open through most of the holidays, and except for Christmas Day. So we think if you've got visitors coming to spend Christmas, come on down to the museum. We've also got a wonderful restaurant called Era, and an amazing boutique that working in the museum, I'm spending too much money in the boutique, but it's got some amazing items to purchase.
I heard the restaurant opened up. What type of food would it be?
It's a bistro.
Bistro, okay.
So it's got a variety of menu items, a little different than maybe some of the others in the area. It's I eat there an awful lot, and I love it.
So all the exhibits that are in there now, do you have a favorite?
Do I have a favorite? I think my favorite is the Indigenous basket. It is really a work of art, and that whole Indigenous gallery with some of the First Nations artwork, I think is really quite stunning.
So December 10th is a day you can check it out on Human Rights Day, but also the membership is, I think, as you said, an ideal Christmas gift.
An ideal Christmas gift.
I think I might get that for Shelley.
That's perfect. I intend to get it for my kids.
Oh, well, now they all know, though, if they're listening to the show. Won't be a surprise anymore.
Yeah.
So the museum obviously hasn't been open that long, but you're planning that student thing you were talking about last time, where you're encouraging. Well, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we're looking at piloting it. We sort of have to get walking before we start running, but I think the notion is over time to raise funds to be able to bring students from across Canada to experience the museum, and that was certainly one of Israel Asper's dreams, was that Canadian students would come to this museum. And so we're starting with some pilot projects next year, and hopefully grow sponsors who will help us bring students from across Canada to experience what Manitobans can experience quite easily.
And that's kind of neat when you say that Manitobans can experience it quite easily, because generally speaking, most of the major museums are in the Ottawa area, so we can't do that every day. This is in our backyard, something to be very proud of. But we're going to bring students from across Canada eventually to see it.
Yes, to see it. And we think in the long term, too, maybe offer human rights courses and things that would be of benefit, not just to students, but maybe adults. And, but these are things in the future.
There's lots of things in the future.
There's lots of things in the future. There's a bright future.
It has to be very exciting for you to see it open, to see people coming in, to getting the comments. It's got to be a thrill. I can only imagine.
One of the most thoughtful things that we receive, and probably the most frequent, the quality of our staff. and the quality of our volunteers. We have over 350 volunteers in the museum. And so these are people that are dedicating their time to make this museum such a success. And we hear overwhelmingly positive remarks about the friendliness of our people, the friendliness of our volunteers, and how welcome people feel when they come into the museum.
We'll be right back after we take this break. Back to Food and Friends. Please join me next Saturday, December 13th, when my guest will be Chef Kelly Andreas from Delta, Winnipeg. Kelly is extremely passionate about what he does, and it shows in the presentation and the taste of his creations. My guest today has been Gail Stevens, Interim President and COO of the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. Thank you, Gail, for being on Food and Friends.
Thank you. It was a real pleasure.
This has been fun.
It's been great fun.
Okay, I'm going to come down and buy a membership for Shelley and I shortly.
I'll be watching for you.
Thanks to Nicole Bunnykamp, our show's producer, and Riley, our camera guy. Take care, and please, don't forget to eat your veggies.